Are you tired of visualizing and affirming with no results? Then you might be falling into one of the more common manifesting traps. In this video, I'm going to break down the most common mistakes I've found from helping hundreds of people unblock their manifestations. And I'm also going to explain what you can do if you catch yourself making one of these mistakes. So let's get started. The first mistake is you're doing the work, but then you undo it later with crappy thinking, worrying, doubts, or feelings. So for example, if you're trying to manifest SP, then later on in the day, you might catch yourself worrying, okay, he hasn't forgiven me for what's happened in the past, or I'm not as pretty as the girls that he's hanging out with. Or possibly even worse, you're feeling unwanted and unloved. You might be reliving or remembering how badly he made you feel. You might be feeling sorry for yourself, thinking about how you didn't deserve all that horrible treatment or how they spoke to you really coldly. But here's the thing, if thoughts, assumptions, expectations, and feelings all manifest, then sure, you're doing the work, you're doing the techniques to maybe feel how you would feel if you had your SP or desire for 5 minutes a day, or maybe having a good mental diet and good self-talk for a few moments here and there. But then if you're gonna spend 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or however long in the shower or doing the dishes thinking negatively, then you're just undoing all that work. So every day you're getting like a little closer, but then undoing it, a little closer, but then undoing it. And then you wonder, why am I doing all these techniques but getting nowhere? So for this, the first thing I recommend doing is to try to catch yourself when you're undoing your hard work. And this can be really hard because a lot of the time these are like things you do when you're not really aware, or it's become so natural you're probably doing it habitually before you found the law. And even for people who don't know the law, this is just how they think. So it's really hard to be aware of yourself at all times. But the good news is you don't have to be aware of yourself at all times. So a trick that I used when I first learned the law was I would set an alarm on my phone for twice a day that would go off, and the label or like the words that would pop up when the alarm would go off would be something along the lines of like, what am I thinking? What am I focusing on? What are my assumptions right now? And what are my feelings? And I set that for 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. And I found that like most of the time, the vast majority of the time, and I thought I was a really positive person, but when those alarms would go off, I'd usually be like deep in the throes of feeling really negative about something, usually about work, because that's when I was working. I'd catch myself being annoyed at a bug that I couldn't figure out at the time because I'm a software engineer. Or I'd find myself like feeling annoyed at a coworker for introducing this bug in the first place, or something like that. Sometimes I would catch myself being annoyed at friends, and immediately when that alarm went off and I would find myself in that state, I'd be like, oh no, I've been in this state for like half an hour, like as long as I've been tackling this bug or as long as I've been talking to my friend. And so when that reminder went off, I would just completely drop it. I would try to completely change my train of thought from, oh my goodness, this guy always introduces the dumbest bugs, or my friend is always like this, he's so stubborn. And I would just change my thinking to the opposite. Or if that was too hard to change myself from thinking like, oh, my friend is so stubborn, to no, he's not, he's great, I would instead just think about something entirely different. So sometimes that meant like stepping away for a moment to maybe fix myself a cup of tea and make myself a snack, like checking my emails for like 5 minutes, just anything to break up that negative line of thought that is essentially either undoing what I want or manifesting something I don't want. And the good news is you don't have to catch yourself every single time. Just by catching yourself once or twice a day, you're gonna get better at it because practice makes perfect, and you're gonna make it a habit to check your thoughts. So you really don't have to set 12 alarms a day, and you really don't even have to keep those 2 alarms either, because after like a few weeks of doing that, I was able to turn off the alarms because I got better at catching myself in the moment. So like I'd be annoyed at work and I'd be like, nope, shouldn't be doing that because that's just gonna manifest more problems at work. Or I'd be annoyed at a friend and be like, no, Lena, stop doing that. You gotta drop that line of thought. So eventually the more you practice, the more you get better at it. So mistake number 2, and this one is really common, especially among people who are saying, I've been doing everything right, I've been doing all the techniques, is that we check into 3D consistently. And here's the thing, Neville Goddard said feeling a state produces that state. You want to assume the feeling and think as if you are the person who has your desire already. But in reality, a person who really has your desire would not check as often as these people who are making this mistake check. Think of it this way. Is Bill Gates over here checking his bank account every day? Is a happily married wife checking where her husband is every day? Remember, Neville said that you should feel how you would feel if you had your desire fully, all the way to the end. So sure, you might check their social media in the first 2 weeks of your relationship, but if what you really want is a long-term relationship with this person, marriage, or long-term cohabiting, would you be checking their social media at that point? If you were wealthy, would you be checking your bank account constantly if you knew that you had $10 million in there? No. Checking comes from feeling insecure about whether or not your manifestation is arriving. It's basically not having faith that it will arrive or that it is yours. And Faith is important. Faith is important enough for Neville to have written something called Your Faith is Your Fortune. And when you really understand the law, you'll know that the 3D is just a time-delayed reflection of your inner mind. So it really doesn't make sense to check. If you already know and are certain that you did the mental work, you wouldn't have to check because you'd be like, no, I've been there. And if the 3D hasn't reflected yet, that just means that I have to keep persisting and wait longer. So it doesn't make any sense to check, and you really can't tell yourself, I've been doing everything right, but then checking. Neville Goddard compared manifesting to planting a seed. So when you do the mental actions of visualizing or mental dieting, that's like planting a seed for the fruit that you want. But then checking the 3D is like repeatedly digging up the seedling and checking on it. You're just gonna kill it or stunt it. Just like your manifestation, you shouldn't be checking on it all the time. Plant a seed, water it with techniques, good mental diet, etc., but then leave it. If you find yourself with the urge to check, what I find really helps is to just read a little bit of source material. That could be quotes, that could be a sliver of a book here and there. It could be putting on a Neville Goddard lecture or putting on an audiobook. I would remind yourself of everything I've said here and remind yourself of all the work that you've done. And the fact that if your manifestation isn't here yet, it means that either you need to wait or you need to do more mental work, more visualizing, more mental dieting. So mistake number 3, and this is probably the most insidious mistake I see people make, in part because I don't think Neville Goddard covers it well enough, is they have a limiting belief or assumption that blocks their manifestation that they are not aware of having. And since Neville Goddard said assumptions, if persisted in, will harden into fact, if you have 5 good assumptions and 1 bad assumption that blocks all of these, or like a limiting belief, essentially, if you hold this one strongly enough, it will harden it to fact. And if it's contradicting your desire, then you can spend months sitting there wondering, I've been doing all the techniques, why haven't I been seeing movement? So an example of this would be if you're manifesting SP, you might think, okay, I am his type, he loves me, I've been doing the mental dieting and the visualization to make him mine, but if you have the limiting belief, like let's say that he's afraid to commit or he hasn't forgiven you for what you've done, then such a tiny limiting belief alone could be blocking your whole manifestation. Because a lot of people will truly feel that that's the truth, that they had a horrible falling out and fight, and that SP is still mad at them for it. Or it might not even be a limiting belief about SP, it might be a limiting belief about themselves, where they might deeply feel, okay, I'm not worthy of the type of love that I want, or men just don't want to commit to me. Or it could even be a limiting belief about relationships in general. Like, I meet some people who have really negative beliefs about the entire gender that they're attracted to. They might think, okay, all men are bad, or like, all women are bad, or they might think, okay, every man I've ever been has cheated on me, or something like that. It could just be a belief about relationships. Or maybe their parents were divorced, and now they don't actually believe because they never grew up seeing a good example of enduring, true, ongoing love that can last through difficult times. So as you can see, if you just focus on doing only the techniques, if you don't actually look at the thoughts and the assumptions that you'll have, you might not notice a limiting belief like this. And that's why my favorite manifesting book of all time is The Nature of Personal Reality by Jane Roberts, who channeled this entity Seth, and Seth taught that beliefs, which are the same thing as assumptions, create reality. Because from your beliefs come all your thoughts, feelings, and expectations. And these are what you will have all the time. So for example, if you believe that the economy makes it harder to make money, then your overall feelings would be negative or hopelessness, and you might be thinking, okay, I better not lose my job now, or it's going to be really hard to find another one. But if you had a completely different belief that in every economic downturn, there's a whole abundance of opportunities to make money, you might, instead of feeling hopeless, you might instead feel excited. You might think, oh my goodness, there's so many opportunities out there. You'll be expecting to find one, and then maybe generate a whole new business that you couldn't otherwise do when the economy is more stable. Or in terms of SP, if you think, okay, men don't want to commit in general, then you're going to feel really insecure overall, you're going to have a negative feeling about dating in general, or you're going to be thinking, how do I make my SP commit to me? I know he likes me, but would he be willing to settle down? Whereas if you had the opposite belief that men do want to commit, and what men really want is to settle down and have a family and get married, then you wouldn't be so worried about having SP commit to you, or wondering what he's interested in the long run. So if you think that you're making this mistake, what I would recommend is when you're feeling sad or upset, or any sort of negative feeling at all, to sit down and ask yourself, what would I have to believe to feel this way? What am I feeling right now, and why? So for example, if you're thinking about 3P and you feel sad or nervous, you'd ask yourself, okay, why do I feel sad or nervous? Oh, because I think that SP is going to steal him from me, or he's going to leave me for SP. But then you ask yourself, what would I have to believe to feel that way? Well, you might believe that your SP only goes for looks if you're worried that 3P is more attractive than you. Or you might realize, I don't believe that I am a catch. I don't believe that I am as much of a catch as 3P is. Or you might find that you believe that 3P is funnier or more charismatic. And these would all be limiting beliefs. You'd have to believe that you are not any of these things and that SP would only go for someone with these things. Which is obviously not true, because of all the married couples in the world, you don't just see them leaving for someone else who is more fun or prettier than their spouse. There is more to a relationship and more to attraction than just those traits. So there's an infinite number of limiting beliefs you could have about this, but it could be things like SP doesn't really connect to me for whatever reason, or SP can't connect to me, or we didn't connect in the past. These are all limiting beliefs. Or that SP even feels that way about 3P. Just because someone has good traits doesn't mean necessarily there will be any chemistry. So I would ask yourself again, what would I have to believe to feel this way? Because if you could be assured that that belief is not true by God himself, or Neville Goddard himself, or the universe, you wouldn't feel that way anymore. And because beliefs or assumptions manifest reality, it's really important for you to locate the beliefs or assumptions that are not working for you and then change them. And when you finally locate a limiting belief that you had that might be holding you back, you can change it by using a 3-prong technique, which I cover in this video, where I do a deep dive about how to change your beliefs. The next mistake is you're getting bogged down by the how, or you're conditioning how your manifestation has to arrive. You'll be overthinking or analyzing like how it could possibly happen with this, that, or the other conditions in your life. It's not your job to figure out the how. That'll all be worked out for you. Neville Goddard and Seth both taught that this is handled by some other deeper part of yourself, some greater part of you will handle this. All you have to do is assume the state or fully believe that you are already the person that you want to be. And you can do this by a mental diet, visualizing, and all the other techniques you're familiar with. But the thing is, if you dwell on the how, then you're basically dwelling on lack. You're not having faith that it will come. You're thinking to yourself, how could I possibly get that job if I'm not qualified? Or how am I going to get SP if they don't even know that I exist? And because you get what you concentrate upon, the more you focus on these problems, the more you manifest that these problems stay around. I can't tell you how many success stories I've heard from people where the bridge of incidents they had to walk across to get to their manifestation in 3D was so coincidental or complicated that they couldn't possibly have orchestrated that on their own, and they didn't even realize that it was their bridge of incidents until long after they walked across it. To the point where even if they knew in advance that this was going to be their bridge, they couldn't possibly have orchestrated this. You really never know how your manifestation is going to arrive. And that's a good thing, because if you keep your options open and you're open-minded to your manifestation arriving in any way, then you just feel a lot more relaxed, you feel a lot more assured, a lot more faithful that you'll have it, and this is only going to work for you. Oftentimes, I find that when people are thinking about how someone else's manifestation can arrive, it's a lot easier for them, but when you're like in it yourself, it's really hard for you to imagine all the different ways that your manifestation can arrive. One example of this is I had a person who was trying to manifest her dream internship, and I'd encouraged her to put in the application and really feel like she had it, to visualize getting that acceptance email that she was chosen. And it was a really competitive internship, because this is the kind of internship that would just propel anyone in her field to like great success. And I could tell that she wasn't really fully confident in herself, but I still encouraged her anyway. And this position only had one spot. So one day she finally gets an email from them saying that she unfortunately was not accepted and they had gone ahead and chosen someone else. And so she said to me, how could this happen? I was visualizing this. I had been keeping a good mental diet. I really expected I'd be working there this summer. In my head, it was like a done deal already. And she said, I thought I had been having full faith that this was mine. And she was really bummed about it. And I was like, it's okay. It's still salvageable. If you truly, fully had faith that this was yours, would you let something like this throw you off? You could only feel sad or feel like, oh, I guess I did it wrong, if you didn't really truly have full faith. Think of it this way. If I told you that you are not your mother's child, or that your cat is not yours, or that you have 3 heads and one of them is purple, would you be thrown off? Would you believe me or doubt yourself? No, you wouldn't. You know that you're your mother's child. You know your cat is yours. You know that you don't have 3 heads. You have full faith in that no matter what I tell you, no matter what the 3D shows you. So even if I were to come up with a fake DNA test that shows you that your mom isn't yours, I'm assuming you're not adopted, you'd probably look at that and scoff and be like, but I look just like my mom. She and I have the same genetic predispositions. We have the same allergies with the same hair type or whatever. You wouldn't allow yourself, no matter what I said, to be thrown off and to feel sad about it. And so I said to her, and she was really bummed about it. And I kept telling her, like, look, there's still a chance. Like, these decisions are made by people. People can change their minds. You never know. And she would tell me, no, they only ever choose one person each year, and I wasn't chosen. They've never walked back their decision before, while simultaneously telling me that she was pretty sure that she had full faith that this was going to be hers. And so I asked her, would someone with full faith be so easily shaken? If you really truly believe that that internship was yours, could you let yourself be thrown off so hard by this to the point where you're ready to give up? There is still a chance. I know that you don't think there is. Someone with full faith that things would work out might feel a little bummed temporarily, but they would get back up and continue feeling like that job is theirs, continue feeling like their career is onto a great start, that they get to work at their dream job. There is still a way for you to get this internship. She couldn't figure out how, and I told her that's really not for you to worry about. Continue feeling like this is your position. Continue seeing yourself having this job, feeling proud of it, knowing that your career is going to go as well as it will go if you have this internship in your resume. See yourself telling your friends you got it. And so that's exactly what she did. She started revising and still seeing that acceptance email. She kept feeling that feeling of being chosen, of feeling successful. And the craziest thing, without even emailing them back, a short time later, they sent out a second email to her and said, look, we got so many good applicants this year. And historically, we've only ever had a single slot for this position. But because you were such a strong applicant, we've decided for the first time to open this up to 2 seats so that we can accept you as our second intern. So she got the job. And think about it. If she had, instead of persisting in feeling like she was chosen, instead of continuing to have faith that this was hers, if she had allowed that email to cause her to spiral and to be convinced that she couldn't possibly get this job, that it was too late for her, that she had to wait until next year, or that she wasn't good enough, or that she couldn't manifest, or that there truly only was one spot, then her entire mindset would have shifted. And it's possible that they would not have reached out to her. And the point of this story is, if she had instead allowed that email to throw her off and think to herself, okay, the only way for me to get this internship is to win that first place. If they pick someone else, then I'm done for. They have never opened up a second position. And if they already picked someone, then I'm just not getting that internship this year. Or if she thought, okay, the acceptance committee only ever looks at applications once. How could I possibly get that job? Like, all that stuff. But how? The how is not your job, and it's not her job to think of. What is your job is feeling like you are the person who already has what you want, having the beliefs and assumptions that are in line with that, and visualizing your desire and thinking as if you already have your desire. No matter what the 3D says, you don't have to worry about the how. And I want to share a quote with you from At Your Command by Neville Goddard, where he says, the reason most of us fail to realize our desires is because we are constantly conditioning them. Do not condition your desire. Just accept it as it comes to you. Such acceptance of your desire is like dropping seed, fertile seed, into prepared soil. For when you can drop the thing desired in consciousness, confident that it shall appear, you have done all that is expected to you. But to be worried or concerned about the how of your desire maturing is to hold these fertile seeds in a mental grasp, and therefore never to have dropped them in the soil of confidence. So like I said, your job is to feel confident that it's yours already. To really believe, to really assume deeply that it's yours, to the point where you think as if it's yours, you feel as if it's yours, and you expect that it'll come. So the next big mistake I see manifestors making really often is focusing on a lack or focusing on what the current 3D looks like and taking it as proof of anything. Like I always say, my favorite Neville Goddard quote is, feeling a state produces that state. Neville also said in Freedom for All, the consciousness of lack produces poverty. So essentially, what I mean is, when you're focusing on the lack, when you're thinking, oh, he's not texting me, or I'm manifesting wealth, but I'm so broke, look at all this credit card debt that I have. What you focus on and what you feel, you're gonna produce more of. And so it's no wonder if you're doing the techniques, you're undoing them by thinking as if someone who does not have it. You're not feeling like the person who already has it. Or you're looking at everything in a 3D and saying, oh my goodness, this is the reality. No. The 3D is a past, time-delayed reflection of your inner reality. It is not the end-all be-all. When you imagine something in a 3D, or you have the mental diet, or you feel like you have it, you are taking yourself from here to that end goal of having it. Assuming you don't undo your work, as mentioned before, or you don't get waylaid, or you don't get turned around, or you give up, or one of those things. You will get there eventually. But to look at the 3D and to allow that 3D to make you give up is like setting your GPS to, say, a restaurant that you want to go to, And then when you're halfway there, driving there, looking around being like, wait a minute, this isn't the restaurant. Like, where's the kitchen? Where's the table? Where's the food? Oh no, like I'm definitely never gonna get there, ever. I'm not there yet. How can this be? I've been driving for like 5 minutes, but I'm not there yet. And like seeing that you're still in the car on the street, the restaurant not in sight, and freaking out over it. Like, does that make sense to you? Of course not. You would just be like, well, you're not there yet. It takes some time to get there, just like how manifestations take time. The 3D is on a time delay and has to catch up to your 4D. You'd think that's absurd. Just keep driving, keep persisting. Like, you're on the way there, you're doing everything right. It's not like you can just punch in a GPS, back out of your driveway, drive like 10 feet and be like, well, where's the restaurant? Why am I not there yet? I'm doing everything right. I did everything right. Didn't I? I'm following the instructions. Why am I not there yet? You have to understand that the 3D, although it looks convincingly real, as every source teacher has said, is just a reflection of our inner mind. And when you really understand this, it's a lot easier to see the 3D and not freak out about it. Especially if you take the time to sit down and you observe your life from the perspective of, what have I gotten in my life? And what were my beliefs or assumptions and expectations? What were my feelings shortly before that event happened? Because you'll always see that each event corresponds with the feelings and assumptions that you had before that and what you had been focusing on. So you can see for yourself that there is that time delay. And a lot of people ask, like, what is the point of this time delay? It just trips us up. Well, a lot of these source teachers will say that we are here to learn how to control and create responsibly, how to basically become creators, how to harness our mental energies and focus them so that we're not completely scatterbrained. Seth calls this a kindergarten for gods. And so when you understand that we're basically in God kindergarten, learning how to control our energies and not just carelessly creating things willy-nilly, of course there should be a time delay, because otherwise anything you think of would just immediately manifest and it would be complete and utter chaos. All of us have had intrusive thoughts at one point where you're driving and you think, oh man, if I just jerk the wheel, everything will be over. Or if you're walking along a cliff or over a bridge and you're like, whoa, if this bridge were gonna fall, I'd be dead. Like, we've all had thoughts like that. If there were no time delay, which is basically like padding or soundproofing for this kindergarten for gods, if there were no time delay, we would just constantly be manifesting chaos. You would think of an elephant and bam, there's an elephant in your room. You'd be thinking of all the ways that could go wrong and they would just immediately go wrong. You think of an airplane and it would come falling out of the sky and like hitting your house. That is not really a good learning environment. And so you don't have to hate that 3D time delay. If you have anxiety, that time delay probably saves your ass more often than you realize by preventing every negative thought you think from immediately happening. So for people who tend to focus on lack, or who tend to look at the 3D and be like, well, my SP isn't texting me right now, or I'm still poor, remind yourself of the fact that it takes time for things to reflect, and that it is not a bad thing for it to take time, because it probably saves your life a million times a day. And that your only job is to stay focused on what you want. And that, again, someone who has what they want would not have to be focused so much on a 3D, would not be focusing on lack. I don't think Bill Gates sits in his house and worries about bankruptcy all day. Happily married secure couples don't sit at home worrying that their spouse has not texted them back for over 10 minutes. When you understand how the law works, you really don't have to worry about that kind of stuff anymore. An example I've been using for years is, you know how newspapers work. So if I were to hand you a newspaper from World War II and you read it, you don't just freak out and think, oh my goodness, World War II is happening all over again. Like, I can't believe this is happening right now. No, you know that newspapers are written and printed, and then that the newspaper can stay around forever and be outdated. Just like if you understand the law, you can know that you've been doing everything right in the 4D, and that your 3D can still be outdated, just waiting to catch up to your wonderful good 4D, assuming you've been doing everything right. Another example is, you know how movies work. If I were to put on a zombie movie, you wouldn't look at it and be like, oh my goodness, the zombie apocalypse finally happened. And they're tiny and they're stuck inside my iPad. Oh no, how did this happen? Like, we better save them. Like, no, you know that it's just actors filmed somewhere in Hollywood on a set with convincing makeup, and that recording was uploaded to some streaming service website that is now being beamed into your iPad. It's not tiny zombies in your iPad, it's just pixels on your iPad. Like, you understand how this works. You understand how movies work. So you don't have to freak out. Now, when you truly understand how the law works, you can see the 3D and not freak out. And so for people like that, I generally recommend either studying source material or doing that exercise I mentioned earlier of sitting down and looking at your life and thinking of all the things that have ever happened to you and trying to find the beliefs or assumptions or feelings or thoughts that you were holding shortly before that event happened. So you can prove the law to yourself. You don't have to sit here and take my word for it or Neville's word for it. Another big mistake I see people doing is they ignore inspired action. So inspired action is basically something you feel randomly the urge to be doing. You might not understand why you feel that way. It might be something uncharacteristic. A lot of the time, that urge is your greater self's way of trying to urge you to walk across your bridge of incidents. And the thing is, a lot of people will say, but Neville Goddard said I don't have to lift a finger. That's true, but it is possible for you to run really far away from your bridge of incidents. Like, for example, one of the examples I like to cite for people not having to lift a finger is that story of that woman in The Law and the Promise who manifested today's equivalent of $10,000 a month of free money from one of her friends. She didn't even have to meet him. She hadn't even seen him for years. He just reached out to her out of nowhere and was like, hi, I'm really wealthy now and I remembered you exist. And for some reason I feel compelled, after she was doing sats faithfully for days, I feel compelled to give you this money monthly on a recurring basis. But the thing is, if she had refused to pick up the telephone or refused the contact from his lawyer, then that wealth would have had to find some other way to get to her. Here's another example. I'm not saying that you have to work towards your desire. You don't have to. But if you are manifesting your desire and doing sats and mental diet, then you'll usually feel urges to do something, positive urges, things that excite you. And people ask me, how can I tell the difference between inspired action or something else? And I'll ask them, do you feel excited to do it? Or do you feel like you have to do this? Does your urge to do something come from a place of fear or FOMO? Does it feel like a slog when you imagine yourself doing it? Or does it feel like something exciting and fun and happy? If it's those positive feelings, then it's most likely inspired action. So for example, if someone was trying to manifest a new job and they really don't want to put in job applications anymore, but they've been doing the visualization of sats faithfully, they might have the sudden urge to go to the grocery store. Even if they don't need groceries, they just want to, maybe they justify it to themselves like, oh, it sounds fun, I don't know why, I have all my groceries, I guess I just want to get some fresh air, so they go out. They might meet someone there and strike up a conversation and really connect with this person who might be a hiring manager somewhere and then get a job that way. But the thing is, if they just ignored that and they were like, no, logic says that I don't have the time to do this, I had to put out more job applications, even though that sounds like a not fun slog. There's nothing for me at the grocery store, I already have everything. And they just suppress these like urges of excitement to do these kinds of things, then they wouldn't walk across that bridge. Of course, another bridge will be built for them if they keep persisting in the visualizing and in the mental dieting. But if they're really stubborn and they keep ignoring their spontaneous, joyful inspirations to act, they might end up turning away from more and more bridges, which is fine because if they keep persisting properly, more and more bridges will be built for them. But do you really want to delay your manifestation like that? No. So the next time you feel like you want to do something and it sounds really fun, you're excited to do it, and you know that you're not doing it from a place of fear or lack, then I would encourage you to do it. Neville Goddard said in Awakened Imagination and The Search, inner talking is the beginning, the sowing of the seeds of future action. To determine the action, you must consciously initiate and control your inner talking. Neville also said in Out of This World, experience in imagination with all the distinctness of reality, what would be experienced in the flesh were you to achieve your goal. And you shall, in time, meet it in the flesh as you met it in your imagination. Feed the mind with premises, that is, assertions presumed to be true, because assumptions, though unreal to the senses, if persisted in, until they have the feeling of reality, will harden into facts. To an assumption, all means which promote its realization are good. It influences the behavior of all by inspiring in all the movements, the actions, and the words which tend towards fulfillment. So basically he's saying that if you do the mental work in the 4D, your behavior will be influenced, and it'll inspire the movements, the actions, and the words that you need to take to get to where you want to be, to walk across your bridge to what you want. So if you're like what I used to be like, not really spontaneous, not really following your urges, trying to like live life really logically, then I would really recommend that the next time you feel an urge to do something, ask yourself, like, what's the harm in this? Like, really, what's the harm? Is it permanent? Can I overcome it? Like, are there any real downsides to this? If not, just try it. Do it. What do you have to lose? That might be the bridge that you're about to say no to. So the next mistake I want to cover is people running through scenarios in their head of, what if I don't get my desire? Now, if someone really had faith that their desire was theirs, and they really felt like the person who had it, would they really be running through these desires? I mean, to a degree, we all have intrusive thoughts once in a while here and there. But the thing is, the people who make this mistake do it constantly, where they're almost planning to fail. they're looking for a backup plan of like, what if I don't get it? And to some degree, this is normal. It's fine. And you can use it to your advantage and assure yourself that even if things don't work out, everything will be okay. That might help you to not feel too many negative feelings that can work against you. But the thing is, if you start to obsessively think about it, then this is what your mental diet becomes. It's what you start to visualize. It's what you start to feel when you're thinking about it. And so you're inadvertently, accidentally manifesting all these what ifs, like what if my SP doesn't pick me? What if I don't get that job? What if I'm poor forever? My favorite source teacher, Seth, once said, you always imagine the worst case scenario, or you imagine all these undesired what if scenarios, but you don't really often imagine the best case scenario with the same amount of frequency or intensity as you do the negative scenarios. And so I want to ask you, for those of you who do dwell on like, okay, what if the worst case scenario happens, or like, what if it doesn't pan out? How often do you think, and how often do you indulge in imagining, okay, what if the best case scenario panned out? What if I got exactly what I wanted? Do you do that with as much intensity? Do you really relish it? Do you do it for as long as the negative what ifs? I would wager to say no. And so if you think that you've been doing the techniques right and your manifestation still isn't here, you're not seeing movement, then I would ask yourself, like, really look into how often and how intensely you do these what if scenarios. And when you catch yourself doing them, switch to imagining the what if I got this. What if I got what I wanted scenario? What if the best case scenario, even better than what I've been imagining, happens? What would my life be like? What would I think? What would I feel? What would I do? And again, someone who fully believes that they have something, that something is theirs, aside from maybe the fun hypothetical daydream here and there, is not going to consistently have these negative what if scenarios. And I'll give an example. If you know that your dog is yours, how often do you think, oh, but what if she's not actually mine? What if she's just like an identical clone that some evil laboratory swapped out with my real dog? Or how often do you think, what if my mom really isn't actually my mom? Even though we look the same, we have the same mannerisms, we have the same health quirks, what if she's just actually an alien or something? Like, what if she's not actually mine? What if I was switched at birth in a hospital by mistake? You know, like, you don't really have these what if scenarios. People who are like insanely wealthy probably don't often think, what if I just lost all my money tomorrow? Like, what if I not only lost all my money, but all my skills and all my connections and all my friends? Like, what would I do? They might do it every so often, maybe once in a blue moon, but they're obviously not focusing on it and persisting in it and thinking and imagining it all the time. Otherwise, they wouldn't have their wealth anymore. So if you catch yourself doing this, I'd really strongly encourage you to stop doing it, or imagine like a really harmless what if scenario, like a hypothetical of what if dogs could fly or something like that. And then instead focus your energy on imagining what if what I want were true. And the last mistake on our list that I see people making is they spiral and they give up right before their manifestation arrives. And you never know when it'll come, and that's why Neville Goddard says to persist. There's like this cartoon that comes to mind, you might have seen it, where like two men are digging towards diamonds, and one of them is so close, but then he just gives up right before that. And the other person is farther, but is super determined to persist. And so when I see people manifesting towards their desires and really putting in the work, but like giving up before they see movement or results, I always think of that comment again. I'm like, no, you never know how close you are to your desire. You might have been this close. That story I told earlier of the girl who wanted that internship, if she had allowed that email to throw her off and she gave up, she might not have gotten that second position. If she instead allowed her 3D to change her thinking, to cause her to smile and be like, oh, I knew it, I just wasn't good enough, my grades just weren't that good, I can't interview worth a damn. If she had said that to herself and she completely gave up and didn't persist and think, no matter what happens, this position is mine, I've seen it. If she wasn't strong enough and motivated enough to do that, it's quite possible that she just would not have gotten that internship. Maybe she would have had to wait next year. Maybe next year she might have been too discouraged to apply at all. So I think it's really important for you guys to understand. You never know how close you are. And I'm not saying it's never okay to spiral. Everybody spirals at some point. It's okay. You can feel negative emotions. We're human. It's natural. Even Neville Goddard sometimes felt discouraged or scared, especially when his wife in her later years was having some health scares. That's totally natural. The difference is you can feel negative temporarily and then decide and know that after you cry it out or whatever, or vent to your friends, that you're going to get up and get back in the saddle and continue manifesting. Now that might not be for hours, it might not be for days, it might not be for weeks, but the most important thing is you don't give up permanently and you don't walk away. People ask me all the time, can I take a break from manifesting? Yes, if you're being burned out, totally take that break. But the thing is, you owe it to yourself to really truly give this a good shot again. If you're too overwhelmed right now to try anymore, and you just want to go back to living life normally, that's fine. But I strongly urge you to just not permanently give up. You can spiral, you can take a break, you can indulge in all the negative emotions if you want, but at some point, dust yourself off and give it a good shot again when you're ready. If you enjoy this, check out my playlist here where I do a deeper dive into some of these mistakes and how to fix them, or you can check out this video here that YouTube thinks you'll like. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next one.